She took a breath and stepped forward. She wasn't a polished speaker, and her clothes were plain, no suit, no styled hair. But she carried something stronger than credentials. She carried truth. "I'm not a licensed therapist," she began, voice steady. "I'm not a social worker. I'm not even a nanny. I clean floors. I fold laundry. I do dishes." She looked at the jury. "But I know what it's like to be overlooked, to not speak the language others expect. My brother Marcus is autistic. He didn't say a single word until he was 11. I learned sign language when I was 13 just to ask him how he felt." Her voice wavered. She continued anyway. "We grew up in a trailer park outside Houston. Our roof leaked. Our electricity went out every other month. But we had each other. And in the dark, when Marcus couldn't sleep, we'd use flashlights to blink messages back and forth." A hush fell over the room. She held up her hands and signed, "I see you." That's the first thing I ever told Lucas. Not with words, with presence. Maya paused. Then she described it all. The first day she heard him cry. The moment he fell into her lap. The drawing with 3 stick figures. The wall of winds. The whispered word, "Dada." Then, the moment that had kept her up at night. When CPS came, Lucas signed a sentence. His first full one. She looked toward him and signed again, "Don't leave." Lucas looked up and smiled. Next, Brandon Caldwell was called to the stand. Unlike Maya, he looked like he belonged in a courtroom. Tailored suit, crisp tie. But when he spoke, his voice cracked. "I lost my wife 3 years ago. Melissa was the only one who could reach Lucas. After she died, I shut down. I buried myself in work, and in doing so, I abandoned my son." Gasps murmured through the courtroom. "I thought I could pay people to fix it, hire the best, throw money at his silence. But none of it worked." Then Maya showed up, not with a degree, with patience. He turned toward Lucas. "I watched my son learn to speak again, not just with words, but with trust, with music, with drawings. And I watched a woman rebuild what I'd let fall apart." The judge sat forward, her expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, the court clerk called for Lucas himself. "Your Honor," Brandon said quickly, "he doesn't testify." But Lucas stood, quietly, bravely. He walked up to the judge's bench, holding a sheet of paper. On it was a crayon drawing 3 stick figures again. This time, they stood holding hands beneath a tree that reached off the page. And above them, in large, careful letters, were the words, "She helped me be real." Gasps broke the room. Lucas looked up and signed, slowly, "She made me feel safe." Maya covered her mouth. The judge looked at the boy, then at Maya, then at Brandon. Her expression softened. "I've presided over hundreds of custody and protection cases," she said, her voice quiet. "But few people stand before me and offer something as powerful as presence. You didn't come here to defend your credentials, Miss Walker. You came here to prove your heart. And that, I believe, is the strongest testimony of all." She slammed the gavel. Case dismissed. No further action required. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. Brandon stood, speechless. Lucas ran straight into Maya's arms. The battle was over. But something deeper had just begun. Weeks turned into months, and the mansion that once echoed with hollow silence now hummed with quiet, purposeful life. Lucas no longer waited behind door frames to peer out. He walked freely down the hallways, sometimes barefoot, sometimes with mismatched socks. He was still cautious, still quiet, but the fear that used to weigh down his steps had lifted. Now he moved like a child discovering that the world, maybe, wasn't all sharp edges and unkind hands. In the mornings, Maya would find him already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a book in his lap, even if he couldn't read all the words yet. He liked turning the pages slowly, like he was listening to them speak. Brandon had transformed too. Gone was the man who lived inside spreadsheets and tech reports. He now sat at the breakfast table every morning, hair still messy, reading the Austin Chronicle aloud while Lucas mimicked certain words and signs. Sometimes Brandon got the signs wrong, embarrassingly wrong. Lucas would burst into breathy giggles, and Maya would correct him with exaggerated flair. That was their rhythm now. Imperfect, but honest. Maya, meanwhile, was growing in her own way. She enrolled in evening courses at the local community college, child psychology, early development, even a public speaking seminar. She worked during the day, studied at night, and blogged in between. Her blog, Speaking Without Sound, took off faster than she expected. One post about signing lullabies went viral. Soon, her inbox was flooded with messages from parents, teachers, even college professors. She wrote about how to connect with children who don't speak. How silence isn't the absence of language, it's just another form of it. NPR called. Then a morning show. Then a podcast hosted by a renowned child psychologist. Her name, once just a whisper in Brandon Caldwell's HR files, was now printed in conference brochures, alongside speakers with PhDs. But Maya never let it go to her head. Her best work still happened in the quietest moments, in a living room in Austin, next to a boy who once didn't trust anyone. On Lucas's 8th birthday, Maya organized a backyard picnic. It wasn't extravagant, just a checkered blanket, string lights in the trees, cupcakes, and a few close friends. But it was the first birthday he'd celebrated since his mother passed. Brandon handed Lucas a small wooden train carved with his name. Lucas ran his fingers over the letters, then looked up and signed, "Thank you, Dada." Later, as dusk painted the sky in streaks of lavender and coral, Lucas tugged on Maya's sleeve and pointed to the framed picture she'd hung earlier on a tree branch. It showed the three of them, Lucas in the center, Brandon's hand on his shoulder, Maya kneeling beside him, their faces lit by the Texas sun. Lucas signed, "Family." Brandon walked over slowly, placing a hand on each of their backs. "I used to think success was about legacy," he said softly. "Now I think it's about who you come home to." On a spring evening in late April, they visited Lady Bird Lake. It was Maya's idea, just a quiet day, feeding ducks, watching the breeze ripple across the water. Lucas giggled as the ducks chased breadcrumbs, occasionally signing more to Brandon, who clumsily threw extra pieces until they were out. The moment felt ordinary and magical all at once. Maya leaned back on the bench and exhaled. "I used to think silence was loneliness," she said. "Now?" Brandon asked beside her. She glanced at Lucas, who was now holding their hands, one of his in each of theirs. "Now I think it's where the real things begin." That night, Brandon surprised her with a framed photo, the one Lucas had pointed to during the picnic. Beneath it, etched into a wooden plaque, were words that Maya had once spoken months ago. "Family is the place where the storm breaks." She ran her fingers over the inscription, heart full. They weren't perfect. The wounds were still there, scars that would take years to fade. But they were together. They were healing. They were building something new, not from what was left behind, but from what they had chosen day after day to grow. And in that quiet, imperfect, beautiful truth, they were finally home.